There are things that happen in combat that never make it into the official report. Not because the men who experienced them were lying, not because their commanding officers doubted them, but because there is no box on a military incident form for what they saw. And the men who filled out those forms knew it. This is one of those accounts. In the dense mountain provinces of the Philippines, a unit of Filipino soldiers on a village security detail encountered something that none of them had a name for. Something that moved at the edge of their perimeter in the hours before dawn. Something that was not in any military intelligence briefing, not in any threat assessment, and not in any field manual they had ever been issued. What they described, independently, separately, across multiple debriefs, was a creature, winged, large, dark. It moving with a speed and silence that should not have been possible for something of its size. And before the night was over, one of their men was gone. Stay with this. Because what makes this account worth examining is not just what they saw. It is what the Filipino military's own institutional knowledge says about what lives in those mountains and why soldiers in that region have been quietly warned about it for generations. The unit was operating in the Cordillera Administrative Region, a mountainous area in northern Luzon that has been a contested zone in various forms since long before the modern Philippine military existed. The terrain is difficult, the jungle canopy is dense enough to eliminate aerial visibility, and the villages scattered across those ridgelines have maintained cultural traditions about the forest that predate Spanish colonization by centuries. The mission was standard village security, establish a perimeter, maintain presence, deter incursion from insurgent elements known to operate in the area. What it was not supposed to be was contact with something the unit could not classify. The first sign that the night was different came from the animals. Every soldier with field experience knows that the jungle has a sound profile, a baseline of noise that tells you when something has disturbed the environment. Insects, birds, the ambient movement of small animals through undergrowth. When that baseline drops, something is wrong. It dropped at approximately 2 a.m. The perimeter went quiet in a way that the unit's senior NCO later described as total, not gradual, not the slow fade of animals retreating from a distant threat. Immediate, like a switch being thrown. 3 soldiers reported movement at the tree line simultaneously, not ground movement, something above the canopy line, large enough to displace branches moving too fluidly for the wind. Then one of them saw it clearly. The description that has been documented across multiple versions of this account is consistent in its core details. Wingspan estimated between 2.5 and 3 meters. Dark coloring, described variously as deep brown and near black. A body mass that suggested something significantly larger than any known bat species. And a face. That last detail is the one that stops people, not a bat's face. Not the flattened or wide-nostriled profile of a large fruit bat. Something closer to human. High-set eyes, a defined jaw. The kind of facial structure that the human brain is hardwired to recognize, and to find profoundly wrong when it appears on something that should not have one. The creature did not attack immediately. It moved along the tree line. It appeared to be watching the perimeter. One of the soldiers fired a warning burst. The creature did not flee the way an animal flees. It did not scatter. It withdrew deliberately, unhurried, back into the canopy and disappeared. And then the soldiers conducted a head count. 1 man was missing. His last confirmed position was the southern edge of the perimeter. His weapon was recovered. He was not. Well, here is where you need to understand something about this region, because the instinct of anyone trained in Western military culture is to immediately reach for a rational tactical explanation, insurgent capture, disorientation in the dark, unauthorized movement. These are the categories the mind reaches for first. But the soldiers who were there knew something that changes the frame entirely. They knew about the Wakwak. The Wakwak is not a recent invention. It is not a campfire story or a local urban legend that emerged in the last generation. It is one of the oldest documented creatures in Philippine mythology, appearing in records that predate Spanish arrival, catalogued by early colonial ethnographers who noted that indigenous populations across multiple regions of the Philippines describe the same entity independently, a large, two-winged creature, nocturnal, associated with remote highland areas, known to take people. The name itself is believed to derive from the sound its wings make, a rhythmic, percussive beat that locals describe as audible from significant distance. Some accounts describe it as a shapeshifter capable of appearing human. Others describe it more consistently with what the soldiers saw, a physical creature of massive wingspan that hunts at night. What makes the Wakwak significant in this context is not its presence in folklore. It is its presence in institutional military awareness. Soldiers stationed in the Cordillera and in the mountainous provinces of Mindanao have reported in various forms across decades being briefed informally by local guides and village elders before nighttime operations. The content of those briefings is not part of any official doctrine, but it is consistent. Stay within the perimeter after dark. Do not investigate sounds at the canopy line. Do not operate alone in the hours before dawn. That is not superstition. That is fieldcraft, passed from people who have lived in that terrain for generations to soldiers who need to survive in it. And the soldiers who ignored it in the account you are hearing right now paid a price that the official incident report does not fully explain. If this account is making you reconsider what gets left out of official military records, hit the like button, because that gap between what soldiers experience and what gets documented is exactly what this channel exists to close. Now, before you reach for the obvious explanation, Noki, let me give you the one that gets cited most frequently, and then I want to show you why it does not close the case. The Philippines is home to the largest bat species on Earth. The giant golden-crowned flying fox, Acerodon jubatus, has a documented wingspan of up to 1.7 meters. It is real. It is found in the Philippines. It roosts in enormous colonies in the jungle canopy, and at night, a colony in flight is a genuinely arresting sight. The rational framework says soldiers under stress, in darkness, in unfamiliar terrain, may have misidentified a large fruit bat. Fear amplifies size perception. The face description may have been a product of adrenaline and low light. That framework is reasonable. It deserves to be stated plainly. Here is what it does not account for. The soldiers' descriptions were collected separately. They were not debriefed together in a room where one man's account could shape another's. The core details, wingspan, coloring, facial structure, the deliberate manner of withdrawal, were consistent across independent accounts given hours apart. And it does not account for the missing man. A frightened giant fruit bat does not remove a soldier from a secured perimeter without leaving evidence of a struggle, without triggering the attention of the soldiers nearest to him, and without leaving any physical trace. Whatever happened to that soldier, and this account does not claim certainty about what did, it was not a panicked animal fleeing a warning shot. Save this video. Because the next time someone gives you the giant fruit bat explanation for a Southeast Asia encounter account, you are going to want the specific details that dismantle it. And they are all right here. There is a pattern worth noting, and this is the part that the military history community rarely engages with directly because it cuts across the clean lines of tactical analysis. The Philippines is not the only theatre where soldiers have reported encounters with creatures that do not fit the known biological record. Vietnam-era Special Forces operations in the highland regions of Southeast Asia produced accounts, some documented in declassified material, others preserved in the testimony of veterans, of entities that local populations had named and warned about for centuries. The same pattern holds in parts of sub-Saharan Africa, in the mountainous regions of Central Asia, in the deep jungle operating environments of South America. In every case, the pattern is the same. Local populations possess detailed, consistent, multi-generational knowledge of something that Western military doctrine has no category for. Soldiers who dismiss that knowledge and operate as though the threat environment consists only of what appears in their intelligence briefings sometimes encounter something that their training did not prepare them for. The question is not whether you believe in the Wakwak. The question is whether you believe that Filipino soldiers with combat experience operating in terrain they knew independently describe the same thing, and whether you think the official explanation fully accounts for what they reported. If you are the kind of person who takes eyewitness testimony seriously when it comes from trained observers, and applies that same standard regardless of whether what they observed fits neatly into a category you are comfortable with, then this channel is built for you. Subscribe. Because what gets covered here does not stop at the official record. There is something else buried in the ethnographic record that most people who encounter this story never find. The Wakwak, in the oldest Philippine accounts, is not described as mindlessly predatory. It is described as territorial. It does not hunt indiscriminately. It responds to intrusion. Specifically, and this is the detail that deserves to land, it responds to intrusion into areas that the communities surrounding those territories had learned, over generations, to leave alone. A military unit establishing a security perimeter in a mountain village at the edge of old-growth jungle at 2 in the morning is, by that framework, not a neutral presence. It is an intrusion into a territory that something, whatever that something is, has defended for longer than the Philippine military has existed. That reframe does not make the creature more supernatural. It makes it more comprehensible. It places it in the same category as every other apex predator that defends a range, responds to threat assessment, and demonstrates the kind of behavioral sophistication that separates predators from prey. The soldier who disappeared may not have been taken at random. He may have been the closest one to the line. Think about who sent you this video or who you already know is going to want to see it. The person who follows military history, who takes eyewitness accounts seriously, who has always suspected that the official record leaves things out. Send it to them now. This is exactly the kind of account they have been looking for without knowing it existed. There is an entire documented thread of military encounters in Southeast Asia, special forces, indigenous scouts, forward operating units, that this account connects to. Accounts from Vietnam, from Mindanao, from the highland provinces that Western military planners consistently underestimated. That thread goes somewhere that a single video cannot follow completely. The next video on this channel goes there directly. Watch it before you form a final conclusion about what Philippine soldiers have been quietly warned about for decades, because the Wakwak is not the only thing in those mountains with a name. The unit never recovered the missing man. The official incident report classified the disappearance as a combat zone missing persons case, the category used when circumstances do not permit a clear determination of cause. It remains open. The soldiers who were on that perimeter went on to complete their service. Several of them, years later, gave accounts to researchers documenting military encounters with unknown entities in Southeast Asia. Those accounts are where the core details of this story were assembled. None of them changed their description of what they saw. None of them softened the facial detail, the wingspan estimate, or the manner in which the creature withdrew. They knew what they would sound like. They gave the account anyway. There is a box on that incident report marked cause of disappearance. Someone filled it in. They wrote undetermined. They were not wrong. They just did not have a word for what they meant. Now tell me something in the comments, not whether you believe it. That is the easy question. Tell me which specific detail you found hardest to explain away. The facial structure, the independent consistency of the accounts, the territorial behavioral pattern, the withdrawal that looked nothing like an animal fleeing. Pick the one that stayed with you, and tell me whether, after everything in this video, you think undetermined was really the most honest word they had available.